Imagine you are sitting at home. Rain begins to fall, and you think this is just another ordinary storm like every other year. But on the night of August 25th, 2017, when Hurricane Harvey made landfall on the Texas coast, everything was completely different. Harvey brought a record-breaking 61.2 inches of rainfall, equivalent to an entire year of rain in a major Asian capital, falling in just 4 days. This is the storm that produced the greatest rainfall total in the recorded meteorological history of the United States, shattering every continental record ever documented. What made Harvey uniquely catastrophic was not just its intensity, but something meteorologists had already seen coming. Yet no one could stop. To understand why a storm could stand still for 5 consecutive days and destroy a city, we must look at the very geography of the land it chose to stop upon. Houston sits on an extremely flat coastal plain with an elevation of only 15 to 30 meters above sea level and no hills anywhere to drain water away. The city was built around a drainage canal system called bayous, channels adequate to carry normal rainfall out toward Galveston Bay. More than 7 million people had chosen to live here because of the strategic seaport, petroleum industry, and economic opportunities this city offered. But the very geography people chose for prosperity became the reason the city could not escape Harvey. High in the atmosphere above Texas, at that moment, a phenomenon called a blocking high, a zone of high pressure that stops movement, had formed and locked Harvey in place. With no upper-level winds to push Harvey away, the storm simply stood still and kept drawing warm moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, pouring it down like a giant faucet that would not turn off. The water temperature of the Gulf of Mexico at that time was 1 to 2 degrees Celsius above normal, and that small fraction of extra warmth provided Harvey with significantly more moisture fuel. When Harvey made its first landfall at 10 p.m. on August 25th, it carried winds of 130 miles per hour and was the strongest Category 4 hurricane to hit Texas in 50 years. Rockport, the small coastal town just a few hundred meters from the shoreline, was the first place to take the direct blow from Harvey's center. After devastating Rockport, Harvey did not move north or west like a normal hurricane, but staggered slowly along the coast and then turned back. That was the moment Harvey officially became something more dangerous than a hurricane. It became a rain machine with no off switch. On August 26th, water began rising in Houston's residential neighborhoods, slowly at first, as if no one yet realized this was only the beginning. Ordinary streets became brown rivers, quiet neighborhoods became vast lakes, and the rain kept falling. In 4 days, Harvey dumped over 1 trillion gallons of water on the Houston area, enough to submerge an entire major capital city under 5 meters of water. Houston's drainage system, though designed for heavy rainfall, could handle only about 1/10 of the water Harvey was delivering. Picture this another way. It was the equivalent of filling 500 West Lakes of Hanoi and pouring them all into the same spot within 96 hours. The city's 2 massive artificial reservoirs, Addicks and Barker, built in the 1940s to protect Houston, filled completely and began overflowing their banks. This was no longer just natural flooding. This was the moment when the very structures built to protect the city began to drown it. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers was forced to open the floodgates of both reservoirs to prevent a catastrophic dam failure, sending water directly into tens of thousands of homes downstream. Tens of thousands of families received evacuation notices while water was already reaching their knees inside their living rooms. In total, more than 30,000 people had to seek emergency shelters, and more than 107,000 homes were flooded or completely destroyed. The George R. Brown Convention Center in downtown Houston, a building with capacity for 10,000 people, received more than 17,000 evacuees on the first night. In the 4th largest city in the United States, with more than 2 million residents, the official emergency response system could not meet the need in those first hours. What happened next produced one of the most extraordinary images in the history of American disaster response, as ordinary people spontaneously organized to rescue each other. Thousands of people from Louisiana, Texas, and neighboring states loaded their boats onto trucks, drove to Houston, and organized into spontaneous rescue teams. People called them the Cajun Navy, and over 4 days, they rescued an estimated more than 25,000 people before official help could reach them. Think about this. While Harvey was drowning Houston, Interstate 10, one of the busiest highways in America, had become a boat launch ramp. Meanwhile, in the industrial zone, chemical facilities along the ship channel began reporting leaks and fires as floodwaters penetrated their systems. The Arkema chemical plant in Crosby exploded twice after its refrigeration systems, storing organic peroxides, completely lost power when floodwaters surrounded the facility. This was when Harvey revealed another dimension of catastrophe, not just drowning homes, but threatening to destroy the industrial infrastructure of an entire nation. More than 1/3 of the entire United States oil refining capacity is concentrated in this region, and Harvey forced most of it to shut down. By August 28th, 3 days after Harvey's landfall, the rain still had not stopped, and the flooded area in Houston had grown to equal the entire area of a medium-sized Vietnamese province. The Cedar Bayou Weather Station recorded a cumulative rainfall of 61.2 inches, meaning 1,555 millimeters, shattering the rainfall record of every storm ever documented in the United States. For comparison, this rainfall amount was greater than 3 times the total annual rainfall of Los Angeles, deposited in the same location in less than 1 week. While rain still had not stopped, Houston's medical system began straining to its limits as hospitals received patients while dealing with power shortages and floodwater entering their ground floor lobbies. The Texas Medical Center, the largest medical complex in the world, concentrated in Houston with 60 healthcare facilities, was surrounded by flooding and forced to conduct emergency patient transfers. Think about what happens when not just your home, but the hospitals, streets, and the city's entire power grid are all submerged at the same moment. On August 30th, Harvey finally began moving northeast, carrying its enormous remaining moisture to devastate Louisiana before finally dissipating. When the rain finally stopped, what remained was a vast urban area, equivalent in size to a mid-sized Vietnamese province, lying underwater. The total economic damage was estimated at $125 billion, making Harvey one of the 2 costliest hurricanes in United States history. More than 107,000 homes were damaged or destroyed, with more than 1/3 uninsured against flooding because owners did not know they lived in a high-risk zone. 88 people lost their lives due to Harvey, a number experts consider to be significantly lower than what actually occurred because many deaths happened in circumstances difficult to document. Among those who perished, a family of 6 drowned in a vehicle when the driver crossed a flooded roadway in Houston, a tragedy that was repeated in different forms many times over. To put it in perspective, Harvey caused financial damage equivalent to the entire GDP of a mid-sized nation for 6 months, inflicted on a single city in less than 2 weeks. As water slowly receded in the following days, Houston revealed a completely transformed landscape, with streets covered in mud and abandoned possessions. Mud from Buffalo Bayou and the drainage system coated roads, lawns, and floors in a dense gray-brown layer that will be impossible to forget. Along suburban streets, hundreds of kilometers of roads were covered in lines of debris, including refrigerators, furniture, carpets, and mold-soaked drywall dragged from inside homes. Scientists later calculated that Harvey transported approximately 27 million tons of sediment equivalent into Galveston Bay, altering the underwater topography of the region. Galveston Bay, one of the most important estuarine ecosystems in the United States, with an area of 600 square kilometers, received an extraordinary amount of pollution and sediment. Chemical plants along the ship channel released an estimated 3 million kilograms of pollutants into groundwater and surface systems during Harvey's duration. The area of Harvey's initial landfall in Rockport took more than 6 months to fully restore electricity and clean water, and many businesses never reopened. 2 years after Harvey, nearly 80% of those who had been displaced had not yet returned home because reconstruction proceeded slowly and resources were inadequate. Communities of color and low-income residential areas in eastern and southeastern Houston bore especially heavy, long-term impacts from Harvey. Harvey forced a painful question that American urban planners could no longer avoid. Should construction on flood-prone land continue to be permitted at all? A Rice University study, published in 2018, concluded that Harvey's rainfall was 3 to 4 times greater than what the region would have received without climate change. In other words, a significant portion of Harvey's damage was amplified by changes in the global climate system that human activity had caused. After Harvey, the United States approved a record $15 billion budget for Houston's flood protection, including a massive storm surge barrier project in Galveston Bay. The Ike Dike project, named after Hurricane Ike of 2008, will construct a system of coastal barriers stretching dozens of kilometers to prevent storm surge from entering Galveston Bay. Houston also began buying back thousands of homes in flood zones to convert them into natural buffer areas rather than rebuilding. Harris County launched a $2.5 billion flood risk reduction program, acquiring more than 2,000 properties in repeatedly flooded areas. But experts warned that even with these massive investments, Houston was still not adequately protected against future storms like Harvey. Harvey forced the entire world to reconsider how coastal megacities are endlessly expanding onto flood-prone land that people built upon simply for convenience. Major coastal cities including Bangkok, Jakarta, Mumbai, and Manila are facing the same dangerous combination of low terrain, high population density, and increasing storm flood risk. And Vietnam, with 2,000 kilometers of coastline and tens of millions of people living on low-lying delta plains, is not an exception. Harvey also prompted a major reform of the United States flood risk mapping system, which had been criticized as outdated and failing to accurately reflect actual risk. The National Flood Insurance Program paid out more than $9 billion in Harvey claims, pushing the program deeper into debt. Many scientists called Harvey the first glimpse of the type of weather catastrophe that climate change will produce with increasing frequency in the 21st century. In 2017, Harvey was only the first in a record-breaking hurricane season, followed by Irma and Maria, devastating Florida and Puerto Rico. NOAA scientists documented that hurricane intensity is likely to increase significantly under climate change conditions, with stronger storm surge and rainfall being particularly concerning. From Harvey, the global research community began paying far greater attention to the phenomenon of extreme rainfall, amplified by warmer ocean temperatures and a warmer atmosphere. Research on Harvey also revealed that Houston's urban concretization had increased surface water runoff by 7 to 10 times compared to natural land. Every acre of natural land converted to parking lot or rooftop added incrementally to the flood risk for the entire surrounding region. After Harvey, Houston began seriously studying the adoption of green infrastructure, such as artificial wetlands, green roofs, and rain gardens to absorb water. The city also began revising building codes to require new construction to withstand greater rainfall than previous standards had required. Harvey itself taught a painful lesson about early warning systems, specifically that meteorologists predicted the hurricane correctly, but flood models were completely wrong. Flood simulation systems were not designed to handle rainfall exceeding every historical event, and many models simply errored out and stopped functioning. After Harvey, the United States Geological Survey (USGS) significantly expanded its real-time water level sensor network across Houston's entire bayou system. The United States also began integrating long-term climate data into infrastructure design models, rather than relying only on short-term historical data as before. The final, and perhaps most important lesson from Harvey, is not a technical one, but a lesson about how humans choose where to live and how we distribute risk. Millions of people will continue living in Houston because the city provides jobs, opportunity, and community they are unwilling to leave behind, even knowing the risk exists. And Harvey is now the name that every hydraulic engineer, urban planner, and climate scientist worldwide knows when studying extreme urban flooding. The name Harvey is now used as shorthand in climate science to describe a new disaster category: a stalled urban storm amplified by warmer oceans. Harvey also sparked a national debate in the United States about who must bear the cost of rebuilding, between federal taxpayers and communities that had chosen to live in hazardous zones. That question still has no satisfying answer in the United States, and even less of an answer in most developing countries that are more vulnerable to extreme flooding. Looking back at Harvey's 4 days, what haunts the mind most is not the record numbers, but the speed at which a modern and wealthy city can be completely overwhelmed. Houston is not a poor or under-resourced city. It is the 4th largest city in the United States, with world-class infrastructure, and Harvey overwhelmed all of it. That means no coastal city in the world, no matter how wealthy or well-equipped, can consider itself completely safe from this kind of disaster. Harvey leaves behind a question that climate scientists are still researching: whether storms like Harvey will occur more frequently in the future, and if so, how often. Some climate models predict that extreme rainfall events like Harvey, once considered a 500-year event, could become a 100-year event by the end of this century. And if that happens, not just Houston, but Ho Chi Minh City, Bangkok, Miami, and dozens of other coastal megacities will face existential questions about their future. 4 days. That is all the time Harvey needed to turn the 4th largest city in the United States into a vast lake and force hundreds of thousands of people to flee their homes. But what Harvey left behind was not only physical damage, it was a new understanding of the limits of humanity's ability to control nature in the century of climate change. Harvey reminds us that modern technology, no matter how sophisticated, cannot substitute for respect toward natural geography and the limits of the land we build upon. Houston's bayous had drained this land for thousands of years before the city was built, and they will continue doing so in their own way, on their own terms. And the rain will still fall, the ocean will still warm, and the next storms are forming right now, somewhere out on the ocean surface. Houston's community today has grown more resilient, but resilient does not mean immune to the next disaster. Billions of dollars are being invested in the newest flood control infrastructure in Houston. But behind those levees and reservoirs is a question no one can answer with certainty. That question is this: when the next Harvey arrives, will these structures be strong enough to withstand a storm that may be even stronger, even slower, and even wetter? Engineers say the new system would withstand another Harvey, but they also add that this is only true if the next Harvey is no larger than the storm of 2017. That is a conditional guarantee in a world where climatic conditions are changing every year. And while we wait for the future to answer, more than 7 million people continue living on Houston's flat coastal plain, watching the Gulf of Mexico one more time with each new hurricane season. That is not a lack of understanding. It is a human choice, complex, reasoned, and not easy to judge simply. Millions of other people around the world make the same choice every day, living beside rivers, beside oceans, beside volcanoes, because life demands they be there. Harvey is not the last disaster Houston will face. Scientists say this with near absolute certainty. The question is no longer whether another Harvey will come, but when, and whether what we are building today will be enough to withstand it. And the answer to that question depends not only on what we build on the ground, but on what we do with the atmosphere above our heads. 4 days, 1 trillion gallons of water, $125 billion in damage. And the greatest lesson of Harvey is still being written, because Harvey is not just the story of a storm, it is the story of the relationship between humanity and a changing climate. A relationship we still do not know how to navigate. 4 days. That is all the time Harvey stood still above Houston. But the consequences of those 4 days are still shaping how millions of people around the world look at the danger of the very ground they stand on. Right up to this day.